Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We turn now in the Johnson edition to poem 284, The Drop That Wrestles in the Sea. Now, this is a fascinating poem. Some have called this another Sam Boyle's poem. Emily was once referred to by Sam Boyles as half angel, half demon, and I think that in some ways we're probably back to poem 162, My River Runs to Thee, or you'll remember poem 201, Two Swimmers Wrestled on the Spar. But it, for me, really is our return back to poem 59. I told you guys when we did this poem that we would come back to it a number of times. Emily's playing with, dancing with, critiquing the story of Jacob wrestling the angel or God, the angel of God, in Genesis 32, 24 through 32. The, poem 59, you'll remember, ran like this. A little east of Jordan, evangelists record, a gymnast and an angel did wrestle long and hard, till morning touching mountain and Jacob waxing strong. The angel begged permission to breakfast to return. Not so, said cunning Jacob, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. Stranger the which acceded to. Light swung the silver fleeces, Peniel hills beyond, and the bewildered gymnast found he had worsted God. Now, this idea of worsting God or going beyond God, I think, is central to our reading of this poem. However, it's going to be a challenging poem to know exactly how to interpret. And of course, no big shock there to us as we are spending our time with these poems. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through already our set of introductory comments. I'm really hopeful that you've already worked through our preceding 283 poems. We just finished with a main to move a queen. Now, in this poem, again, Emily will assert or emphasize her smallness. In poem 61, she's as small as a mouse. In poem 283, she's as small as a wren. Here, she's a small drop of water within the large sea. Of course, the sea, Emily loves that imagery. It can be both terrifying as well as electrifying. Ecstasy is sometimes associated with the sea. It is hard to know, though, how to take this poem. Does the drop want to serve the sea, to become part of the sea, to assume the sea, or does it want to compete in some way with the sea? Some have seen this as a conversion poem. Some have seen this as one of her greatest defiant poems, her Promethean poems. And we're going to get Amphitrite, the story of Amphitrite and Poseidon. And that's an interesting spin out of this poem as well, because, of course, as we know from our study of Greek mythology and Edith Hamilton's mythology, that Poseidon, of course, using the dolphin, will subdue Amphitrite and even rape her to make her become his wife, if you will. The drop that wrestles in the sea forgets her own locality as I toward thee. She knows herself an incense small, yet small, she sighs, if all is all, how larger be? The ocean smiles at her conceit, but she, forgetting Amphitrite, pleads me? Now, again, guys, this is why this poet is, I think, America's greatest poet, along with Walt Whitman. And speaking of Whitman, as we did all of the poems of Whitman's Leaves of Grass in our talks with Walt, here Chats with Emily, we are back to some observations we made at the very beginning, that this is what makes Emily so remarkable. There are so many ways to read this poem. Notice we'll begin with the phrase, the drop. And of course, as we've learned in any number of religious studies, our study of Buddhism, for example, will remind us that the drop is a part of the larger ocean. It can be extracted, but ultimately it must find its way back. But I want to go back to poem 280 for a second. Do you remember when she talks about I drop down and down? I think her use of this word drop is fascinating. The drop that wrestles in the sea, you'll remember wrestles again from poem 59, 110, 281. In the sea, some have equated this with the flood story of Genesis 6 through 9. That drop forgets her own locality. Later it'll be, of course, forgetting Amphitrite. The drop that forgets her own locality, right? In other words, the ability to know place, as I toward thee. Now, again, who is the thee? Some have argued that this poem is about Sam Boyles. Who knows? Then she comes back to it. This drop, she knows herself an incense small. It's interesting that she would use the aroma idea here of incense. And then small, I told you guys, 77 poems. Yet small, and any number of scholars have pointed out that Emily had to recognize that to spell the word small, you have to spell the word all. And that's what makes that word so fascinating, right? It is the smallest, and yet it encompasses all in the spelling of it. Yet small, she sighs. Notice we go from sighs to smiling here in a sec. If all is all, how larger be? In other words, the idea is, okay, I am very small, but the moment I drop into the ocean, I become part of the ocean, and therefore I encompass everything in that huge ocean. And therefore in that recognition moment, the individual drop is in fact all of it, right? It can subsume all of it. By the way, we commented so many times on her use of this word all, especially in poem 772. All is the price of all. Some of us love that as her favorite line of all time. That finally, it's almost as if she's having this dance with the ocean that somehow is representative of deity. Here it will be Poseidon, the ocean, Poseidon. Smiles. It's almost like an indulgent smile, right? Okay, fine, fine, fine. At her conceit, which is a great word, because conceit can mean an idea or a concept. It can also obviously mean arrogance, right? But she, notice italicized, forgetting Aphrodite, and again, this story, it's a horrific, like many of the Greek myths, it's kind of a horrific story. The beautiful nymph is out there dancing on the beach, and Poseidon will convince the dolphin to go to, the beach at Nexus, and will take the girl, and ultimately the girl will be raped by Poseidon and then become his consort, his wife, right? So it's interesting she would throw this, obviously the only time this word gets used in her poetry, pleads, and that's, I think, a significant word. Me, as in the end, Emily maybe does get the last word in this poem. I mean, I'm willing to accept any number of possible interpretations here. Is this a poem about conversion? Is this a poem about refusal of conversion? Now, when we get to poem 1210, we're gonna come back to this poem. So let's just enjoy 1210. The sea said, "Come to the brook." The brook said, "Let me grow." The sea said, "Then you will be a sea. I want a brook. Come now." The sea said, "Go to the sea." The sea said, "I am he, you cherished, learned waters. Wisdom is stale to me." It is significant that this poem and, of course, 1210 both have this last word, me, as associated with it. And when we get to poem 1341, she'll play this game. Unto the whole, how add? Has all a further realm, or utmost an ulterior, or subsidy of balm? This idea that if you decide to subsume yourself within the larger ocean, then you technically are no longer the drop. And I think for Emily, this was the, can we say the rub, to quote our Hamlet 3? This is the rub for Emily and the whole notion of conversion experience. In other words, do I really want to give up my own identity? Self-identity at 2A then is one of the messages. Self-identity is difficult to achieve. And for Emily, you can sense this struggle, this push. At 2B, some have called this a light, polite tone. Wolfe has called it the mannerly conflict between drop and sea. And the language, the word choices here matter, I think. It is significant that in what is sometimes referred to as the master letter number 248, who she wrote this to, it's not clear. Some think that that is Sam Boyle's. She said it this way, quote, Emily, quote, "Master, dash, open your life wide and take me in forever," end quote. It seems to me this is the tension of most of Emily's poetry, and I think this is one of the reasons, guys, I'm challenging you to not just read a few of Emily's most anthologized poems, but to read all of her poems and then set all 1,775 poems in the Johnson edition within a context, and that's why we're enjoying this project. Finally, at 3B, to own a poem like this for yourself. What was a time when you wanted to be the drop in the sea? That is to say, you wanted to be subsumed in something greater than yourself. And what was a time when, maybe like Emily, you were like asking me, and you didn't want to do that at all? Thank you.